and we are very fortunate because we have someone here from Canada who is the Canada Authority for, and is going to talk to us about Bill C-26, and his name is Daniel Couillard, and he's the Director of General Cyber Partnerships at the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. Thank you very much to the brave people who are here for the last presentation. As you can see, well, Canada is far away, but in fact, the presentation is, I'm pleased to be able to present this to you on behalf of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, just to make sure it actually works. So today, I'm just going to take a few minutes to present our organization, but I'm going to put an emphasis on the presentation of Bill C-26, which is an equivalent of NIS2. So something similar to the European NIS2 directive, and it should be, in fact, enter into force quite soon. And it's maybe interesting to see what's happening on our side of the ocean. I'm going to start with tell you something about the Canadian Cybersecurity Centre. It's similar to the French authority ANSSI, if you want to compare it to the French state. But to be more specific, perhaps, our organization has two main missions. The mother organization is the security of telecommunications. So it has a cybersecurity mission, but also has a foreign intelligence. Well, if you want to compare it, it's like the DGSE in France for the technical part of their mission. So those are the two functions we have, and one informs the other. That is our added value in the Canadian cybersecurity ecosystem, because our information, our support and consultancy, our partnership is informed directly by the intelligence part of our business. So that is, I believe, added value that we have, if you compare it to other actors. We are based in Ottawa, for those who'd like to know, but we have nationwide ambitions. It's quite a recent creation, in fact, our National Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. For those who have access to the presentation, just to look at this, I just wanted to show you in the middle, what looks like the Olympic rings. We have treated over 2,000 cases of cybersecurity incidents, 50% related to the federal government and 50% were related to the private sector. So it's also part of this context that Bill C-26 is seeking to address. Now, all these incidents were reported voluntarily to the Canadian Centre. What I mean is that we call ourselves the Cyber Centre. So I just want to tell you that, so you'll hear Cyber Centre instead of Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, just so that you... All right, now C-26, Bill C-26, it is the first law on cybersecurity in Canada. It's the very first since the birth of cybersecurity, and it has two parts. Part one is... it talks about the need for security in the law on Canadian telecommunications. That's for the major telecommunications players. But the part two is the very interesting part, which will bring in the law on critical cyber protection systems, protection of critical cyber systems in Canada. The bill started in 2022, but at the present stage, it is currently going through the parliamentary system in Canada to be able to implement new legislation. And if everything goes well, we should have the law with royal approval, because and then the law should enter into force in June 2024. And then, of course, we will have to develop regulatory operations, and all of that will take some time before the law is fully in force and actually implemented and enforced. So now just some information about the Canadian context and the jurisdiction in particular for critical infrastructures. In the Canadian Federation, the federal government, the provincial governments and the municipalities have responsibilities with respect to certain critical sectors. What this means is that the three levels of our governance model have to work together to be able to achieve the objectives and commit the critical infrastructures. What's important is the way information is passed on. And Bill C-26, one of the creations, is the mechanism for exchange of information between federal and provincial for critical infrastructures. And the federal bill is, well, the first step to invest in an effort to protect infrastructures, and we're also working concomitantly with the provinces so that they can also make the same effort regarding the essential services over which they have jurisdiction. In the Canadian federal context, the federal government has authority over 4 major infrastructural sectors: telecommunications, transport, financial sector, and the energy sector. So our Bill C-26 is going to regulate 4 essential sectors. If we compare it with NIS 2 in Europe, we're looking at 16 sectors. I think there's a difference between the 2 models, but for us, it is the first step in an effort which should lead us to bring in the protection of all the systems in Canada. So the new law really brings in 3 new powers or groups of powers for the government, and they are enshrined in a reference framework. First of all, is the concept of designation. So the government is going to have the authority to appoint an essential system, to designate a system that is essential to public safety and security in Canada, or the economic safety. So through the law, the government will name and designate these systems, and the operators of these essential systems who are appointed as essential will have obligations. They will have obligations that they have to fulfill immediately. And we are going into a little bit more detail in a few more slides. And the third power is directive power. So the government will be empowered to lay down directive that will be enforceable immediately by the operators of essential systems. So here we're talking about an authority which is a silver, well, there's sometimes a silver bullet that we don't use very often, but still it is. Now, who are the main players, the main stakeholders? Of course, there's the government, which will have the authority to enforce the law. Our Ministry of Public Security, that ministry will be the coordinator federally to ensure enforcement of the law. Many government entities with their ministries, organizations, regulation agencies, so all of them will be involved in that to coordinate the law. The regulatory bodies associated with the sectors that will be identified with respect to the law, they will be there, of course, to ensure the compliance of the law and ensure that the specificities of each area are reflected and in line with the regulatory framework that already exists. And finally, then there's us, the Canadian Cybersecurity Centre. We are the expert in cybersecurity, and we will have a number of other functions as well. So our first role as the Canadian Cybersecurity Centre is to provide advice, consultancy to all the partners who are involved in this bill. Now, of course, the government, the ministry, and all the operators themselves. What's interesting to see is that we are going to have a role both related to the operators of federal systems, but also to the regulatory bodies to assist them in their work. So our opinions are not enforceable. We are asked to provide opinions. The regulatory bodies will have the power to enforce or to judge the compliance of one of the operators. The other obligation that operators will have is they will be the reporting obligations, so incident reports. So it won't be a voluntary approach anymore. It will be a legislative approach wherein they will have to report all incidents to us. And we know for each incident that is reported, there are many that are not reported. So, of course, here These are powers under the law to enforce that sharing of information, to share that information with the rest of the sector that is impacted, but also with the rest of the sectors in Canada. And this is one of the most important things. And the information is going to be provided by the operators. We, as the Canadian Cybersecurity Centre, we will connect the dots to ensure that we understand what we can learn from this incident. It could be a simple incident and a one-off thing, but it could also be a campaign by a state actor. It can be, is it something that is characterized where we need to protect the Canadian economy? Now, let's talk a little bit about these powers in more detail. As I mentioned, the designation, the appointment of the system is in two stages. The first stage is that the government is going to draw up a list of the vital, of the essential systems. You see there are already 6 of them that are identified. They're here on the slide. And the government is going to be allowed to continue to amend this as required. The second portion of the designation process, the government will now appoint the operators who are then subject to these legal requirements and to the mandatory requirements as stated. So what are the measures and obligations for the designated operators? So a cybersecurity program has to be implemented. So documenting a cybersecurity program, identification, detection, protection, risk management. There's also the obligation clearly appearing in the law that operators will have to manage the risk associated with the supply chain and also the risk associated with third parties. So there will be a 90-day period for the first phase of this, and it will probably be shared with us then for a review. And this will be updated once a year. As I mentioned, the other obligation is to report incidents. Now, we're going to clarify exactly what we mean by what is a cybersecurity incident, because that is, of course, the core of the topic. What are the conditions? What are the form? What is the content to report an incident? What are the thresholds that will trigger a reporting action? So in the Canadian context, this is very important because many of our major industrialists operate on both sides of the border in North America. So harmonization between sectors, but also with our partner to the south is extremely important to, make a life easier for everyone. The last point, of course, is compliance with the law. Of course, the bill, of course, there's some criticism of the law, of the bill, but in fact the bill is making quite good progress, and we are confident that we will succeed. The professional bodies recognize the need for this sort of law in Canada, but we have to have compliance processes, though, to ensure that the obligations of the law are respected. So, like any bill, there will be administrative penalties and also financial penalties if the designated operators do not comply with the directives or the program or the provisions of the law. Now, as I said, Bill C-26 is a first step, and I believe that it's the first step of a path that Canada is on. The bill, there's been a great deal of reaction to it, generally positive. And what's interesting is other sectors, other associations that have not, in fact, covered by the bill have said, well, why are we not included in the bill? And asked how they could be included in the bill in the near future. Discussions have begun. We are working with the provinces on a daily basis, so the discussions have started. And there are 4 sectors, as I said, which are the essential sectors that many industries need to be able to do their business and fulfill their missions. It's the beginning of the path. and we are very happy and excited about this new challenge. That's what I wanted to tell you. I hope this was interesting, and thank you to all of you who stayed here. Very interesting. Thank you very much for that.